I'm going to talk briefly about the Shelton Hills project, give everyone a brief update and discuss this just in some general terms. What I've passed out is a list of all the projects that we'll be presenting on, as well as a letter from Hall Equities, which I think summarizes their current status of affairs as well. This is a project that we're pretty excited about here. It's been in the planning stages for virtually years, and we're very close to having the environmental impact statement, the final draft of that released, and moving toward the entitlement process and getting some other things underway. The first phase would be this commercial activity here. This is the Wall Steel Boulevard and 101 at the overpass, and would eventually move into some residential and a business park that backs up to the Sanderson Field and the fairgrounds. It's a 20-year build out. It's a big project, but the first phase is this commercial activity, which we think is a good benefit for the city. We did receive some funding to help with some of this work. Last year we were successful in getting a grant to help with what's called an intertie project. It allows the effluent from the commercial activities here to be moved around between the new satellite plant that's to the north or our main plant downtown. It also helps us to move effluent that we may need to move from the satellite facility for various reasons to be treated downtown. It allows us to increase our capacity overall for the system. Eventually, essentially the systems work as one unit, and allows us to, I guess, not reach capacity at the satellite plant right away, and will allow us to increase capacity or have capacity to accommodate future development, as well as some environmental benefits. The project has had a number of issues that continue to not allow us to move forward. Some of those involve ecology and WSDOT. We've had an emerging issue with PUD. Our WSDOT issues mainly surround getting the interchange work approved. One of the linchpins on that is the ability to have an exchange agreement with WSDOT to allow the new interchange to be moved to the south and acquire some right-of-way or dedicate some right-of-way for that purpose. And in exchange, the current right-of-way that's to the south of the overpass would be put into the commercial center. That kind of exchange agreement is not something WSDOT does routinely. It's complex, and it's taken a lot of time to work through their processes. We're continuing to talk to them about that. It's just a complex matter that any help in helping move that forward for the benefit of both parties, I think, would be appreciated. Goose Lake is located here. This is not part of the Hall Equities holdings. This is owned by ITT Rainier. It's a brownfield site that we've been working to get a cleanup action plan moved forward and finalized with Rainier and Ecology's coordination. That also has taken a long time, and there's a number of reasons for that. One, I think specifically, is Rainier at times seems to come in and out of the conversation, doesn't seem to be a priority, but we'd sure like to make it a priority on our end. And again, any help in proceeding with that would be appreciated. In the process of evaluating the environmental impacts from this project, it was identified there's a former city landfill site to the south that we would also like to close properly, and Ecology is working with us to do an initial study of that site to determine what types of pollutants are present and an approach to clean that up and what that might take. That's a conversation we've really just initiated with Ecology. At this point, they are funding the initial work to determine what level of activity might be needed for the cleanup plan and the closure. The city would be responsible for the cost of that actual cleanup. Again, we'll be, I believe, looking for some assistance as we try to move that forward and make that happen. I think that's my summary on that. What I was going to do now is turn it over to Mike Michael, our city engineer, and he was going to talk about some of the other projects on our list.
Thanks, Steve. And yeah, If you look at the list that Steve just passed out, those of you that have been here for several years off and on at this, as we've had it, will recognize that we've talked about a lot of these before. We're kind of doing that because we're now wrapping up some of the success stories that have come out of having this meeting and getting the folks being able to talk to each other and have a common understanding of what our goals are. In particular, our sewer projects we're just about to wrap those up, and that's been a big success out of these meetings. The assistance and the funding support that we've gotten out of the various agencies to get there. And actually, I'm going to move Steve's board down just a little bit because between the 4 boards we have here now, we pretty much can show everything we've been doing. So, first off, as Steve mentioned, is our new satellite water reclamation plant. That one's not on the list, but that was kind of one of the starts of these successes. We got this one done a few years ago, and that wrapped right up into our main plant rehabilitations, which is down here by Eagle Point, which is just about done now. We've been very successful in getting a great funding package with it. We had a good bid in climate when we did it, and because of that, we're actually able now to add some additional enhancements to improve the long-term operational efficiencies of not only that plant, but the system as a whole. The intertie Steve was mentioning is a piece of that. That project itself will allow the two, as Steve said, to operate as one, make best use of the overall system capacities that we have. We've been continuing to do INI improvements, or infiltration and inflow, excess water into the sewer systems. When I got here back in 2007, we had recently finished one of the downtown basins. 2008, we finished the second. And this year, actually last month, we just wrapped up the last piece of work on one of our larger basins, and that's Basin 5, which is about half of the south side of town. Those lines have been sealed up, and with that work, we've gotten more capacity that we couldn't physically put in the plant, but getting rid of water that we don't have to treat, we can put more water that we do need to treat into the system. We're kind of moving from sewer now to water and trying to pick up on some of the old street infrastructure projects that have been identified for years and we just haven't had the abilities to do. Streetwise in particular, we had some success with Transportation Improvement Board here about a year ago, and we have a very nice grant package from them to do one of our arterial projects, our Lake Boulevard Pioneer Way. We finally got that funded through 2 sources. We have local programs at DOT funding our design for us, and TIB is going to be funding the construction. We're hoping to get that moving later this year or early next year. And by the end of 2015, having a new roadway out there that will not be so rough. And some additional pedestrian improvements as well. Everything we're doing on our street infrastructure, we're trying to incorporate that multimodal, improving freight mobility, improving pedestrian, giving folks options. As I said, utility-wise, we're moving towards water, and our big push right now is to support some work that's been done by partners. In particular, PUD here a couple of years ago did a water main extension out to their new facility at Johns Prairie. And last year, State Patrol completed a water main extension out to the Academy facilities out just north and west of the port out here. Johns Prairie is fully in service with some limited deficiencies. State Patrol's line, we have a commitment to do some system upgrades to fully serve that, and we're working on that. That's the Upper Mountain View project you have here, and basically it's covering the area incorporated by these 3 boards here. New tankage, new storage, basically creating a whole new pressure zone to effectively feed not only ultimately this line that State Patrol put in, but enhance the ability to serve along the line that the PUD put in. And again, another one of these old languishing projects. Back in 2006, I believe it was, the city received a grant to do some sidewalk enhancements down in the vicinity of now the Mason Transit Community Center project, the old armory. We've been kind of on hold trying to do some coordination there. Funding's tight. We've not been able to do it as well as we'd like to, but we're at a point where we need to get that money spent. So we're moving back to some original concepts, and we're going to get some work done that enhances the area, improves things, and gets us moving forward. Same with the next one, and I'll touch on it in a minute and then hand it back over to Steve, but our SR3 Park and Ride project, our corridor enhancements. John was alluding to this in his presentation. That's the piece between the marina and downtown. It's kind of a linchpin between there and the marina and downtown as far as getting pedestrians through there. Again, we're at a point where we need to get that money spent. We've gone back to some original concepts that we can use the resources we have now, make some incremental improvements, and start putting things in place while we continue to look for additional partners and resources. And with that, I'll turn that piece back over to Steve.
Before you sit down, talk briefly about Railroad Avenue.
Oh, Railroad Avenue. I forgot about that one. Railroad Avenue is, at this point, it's very conceptual. It's a primary corridor, principal arterial route that the county and city have been bouncing ideas around what we could improve. And basic concept that we're looking at right now is from the US 101 interchange, the park and ride that's there, into downtown, doing some enhancements, and again, primarily focused on the multimodal, doing some widening, some pedestrian bicycle facilities to make that a realistic connection between US 101 and downtown into the core of the city.
Steve, are we going to talk about Basin 3?
That was another one I missed in there, wasn't it? Our next I&I project, getting rid of the extra water in our sewer system, identified through our orders with the Department of Ecology, is our Basin 3. Basin 3 is the last piece of downtown. Downtown is the wettest, most groundwater impacted portion. We've done 1 and 2, which is about 70% of the downtown area. But we do have Basin 3 left, and we're completing the design on that right now. We're working through various sources, trying to secure some funding. Right now with the treatment system projects, the utility has really taken on a lot of debt. We're kind of to the tipping point with our customers and rates, and so we're looking at options, particularly for grants and other similar funding help that we can find on that project.
So let me supplement that. This has been great stuff that we've done, but we've spent $53.7 million on sewer infrastructure. That is a lot of that is low interest loans. Some of it's grants, very little. And I'm about to follow up on what Randy said. I'm sorry. And those are those new borrowed dollars are spread out amongst our 10,000 population, or just a little under. And the sewer rates in February are going to be, on an average residential account, are going to be $92 a month. And they're going to increase after that, 10% next year, 10% the next year, and then smaller increases beyond that. And that's without doing any more work at all. And to the extent that we do more work, we need to put more money into it. And right now, that has to be borrowed money if we're going to do it. And that's Basin 3 that he just talked about, and that's $6.3 million for that project. It'll take us to be able to take it to completion. Well, we're not. We've been asking for money, but there is not. There's one place you can go is to the state capital account. But we're not going to get. We've been told we're not going to get $6.3 million through the state capital funding process. But we have noticed that there are a lot of cities and sewer districts throughout the state that are having similar problems, and they're facing $100 a month sewer bills. So we're trying to form a coalition of stakeholders, of small cities that are facing Poor economies of scale is the only way to say it. If you're going to do a $10 million project in Thurston County with the lot system, it's a whole different deal than it is trying to do it here in Shelton. The economies of scale work much better. So our intention is to make the next year and to try to build a coalition of people who will try to go in and we're expecting the economy to recover. And we're going to try to get a piece of that so that we can get this work done. It's really good. I mean, we want to keep the environment clean, but all this stuff costs a lot of money, and at this point we're tapped out. So the project design, it's shovel ready. Anyway, if anybody's got any ideas, Gary and I have been going around talking to people, and we'll meet with you.
And I think Dave alluded to a good point for our legislative and congressional folks, and for the citizens in general. Sewer utility improvements, treatment on the sewer side, storage, sourcing on the water side. The cost to do that is pretty independent of where you're at. The basics for what we need to do and the basics for a system improvement in Seattle, the costs are very similar, but in Seattle you got hundreds more, thousands more customers to spread that cost over compared to Shelton, Hoquiam, the small communities around our state. So
we're also a low-income community that's paying $100 a month bills.
Right.
So it's another reason we need some help.
So with that, I guess I'll give it back to Steve to follow on the next piece of the SR3 stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say a little more about this SR3 project. Mike said the Downtown Creek project is a languishing project. This is the granddaddy of languishing projects. We were talking about this project in the 90s. We've secured some of the funding to build this project. We had a vision for really two projects here. This is a park and ride in the entryway from SR3 into Shelton. This is a wetland that includes a pear orchard that was includes trees that were planted by David Shelton. We wanted to preserve that as well as enhance the wetland that's there. We melded these into one project. We received some of the funding. We've done a lot of design work on this, but getting all of the funding we need to build this entire project has stalled. And I guess that's really our message today about this project. We're at a point now where we're being told we need to move forward and meet the obligations that we set forth when we received the grant funding. We need to build this project or give the money back. So we're going forward to build this project with the funding that we have. It's not enough funding to build the project as we've envisioned it. So we're looking for ways to enhance that project and make it what it was intended to be. But at the same time, we're moving ahead and meeting our grant obligations and building something that meets that, but it's not really the enhanced project we had envisioned. So that's also the same project that John Dobson was describing that would provide a connection between the marina, which is just right over here. This trail network, bike network would provide you access right into town. So that's part of the benefits of this project. It's the type of project that, because of its nature, I think hits a lot of different funding options. It provides stormwater enhancement, it's historic preservation, it's a park and ride, it's multimodal. It's a lot of good things. We'd really like to make this thing whole. The last thing I'm mentioning is our city embarked on a task force earlier this past year. The Poverty Task Force was commissioned. They prepared a report, which I believe is on the city website if you want to look at in detail. In summary, a task force looked at how poverty is impacting Shelton and in a larger sense Mason County. It was a pretty sobering conversation with the community about that topic. We identified some key issues. Among those was the increased there's a number of youth that seem to be impacted, and the numbers of youth that are being impacted seem to be increasing at an alarming rate. We don't have the resources to address this, and one of the issues that we identified was helping with the youth strategies and other programs that are being established to help address that issue. The number of unattended youth, which is youth that are basically living on their own, has risen 400% in the last 4 years in our Shelton School District. We identified the need to train and create jobs in this area. It's a low-income area. We need not only jobs, but good living wage jobs. And we need to help our veterans. So in a nutshell, those are the kinds of things that we saw that we collectively need to do. We do a lot of good work here on a volunteer basis. There's a lot of good things happening. We need to improve that. This is really hitting us at home. It's evident in our streets, it's evident in our schools, and that was taken very seriously by the task force.